To the young Africans and members of the global diaspora who dare to believe that nations can change, systems can be rebuilt, and leadership can be redeemed, this book is for you. It always seems impossible until it's done. Nelson Mandela. In every generation, there emerges a voice that refuses to accept the limitations imposed by history, circumstance, or the status quo. A new blueprint for African and global leadership is more than a book. It is a call to rise, to rethink, and to rebuild. Leadership, in its truest form, is not measured by titles or public acclaim, but by courage, purpose, and service. This book challenges assumptions about power, development, and identity, while offering a dignified and innovative framework for African leadership. As you turn these pages, may you find the courage to embrace purpose and lead with integrity. This is more than leadership. It is legacy in motion. Forward. Introduction, Chapter 1, Mindset Transformation. Chapter Summary. Reflection Questions. Chapter 2, African Leadership Frameworks. Chapter Summary. Reflection Questions. Chapter 3, Youth Development, Africa's Power Base. Chapter Summary. Reflection Questions. Chapter 4, Civil Rights and Inclusive Nations. Chapter Summary. Reflection Questions. Chapter 5, Purpose-Driven Success. Chapter Summary. Reflection Questions. Introduction, A New Vision for African and Global Leadership. The Awakening of the African Mind. Leadership is no longer about titles and positions. In the 21st century, leadership is about influence, innovation, and integrity. Nations and communities rise or fall not because of the volume of their resources, but because of the quality of their leaders' thinking. Africa and the global diaspora are at a crossroads. Our demographics are a blessing, a young, energetic population hungry for opportunity. Our history is a paradox of pain and resilience. Our future will depend on one decisive factor, the transformation of mindsets and the emergence of leaders who think beyond survival, beyond personal gain, and beyond narrow identities. This book is structured around 5 pillars: mindset transformation, renewing the operating system of our thoughts; African leadership frameworks, building models that work in our context and for our diaspora communities; youth development, empowering the generation that will outlive current systems; civil rights, ensuring dignity, justice, and equality in leadership; purpose-driven success, aligning personal ambition with collective impact. Each chapter offers insights, case studies, and reflection exercises. Integrated visuals help you see the ideas, not just read them. Key question for the reader: what kind of leader is your community, your nation, and your generation waiting for? And what if that leader is you? Chapter 1, Mindset Transformation. Rewiring the Inner Leader, the Growth Mandala. Mindset is the invisible script that directs your decisions, behaviors, and reactions. It shapes how you interpret opportunities and obstacles. 2 people can receive the same information and respond completely differently, not because of intelligence, but because of mindset. 1.1. Understanding the power of mindset. Your mindset is your internal operating system. It influences how you see yourself, others, and the future. A fixed mindset believes abilities are static. This is just who I am. A growth mindset believes abilities can be developed. I can learn, improve, and adapt. For young professionals, students, and emerging leaders, a growth mindset is the difference between staying stuck in frustration and stepping into progressive leadership. When you begin to see yourself as a learner, a builder, and a solution bearer, your behavior starts to align with that identity. Mindset insight. You cannot lead people into a future you don't believe is possible. 1.2. The science behind mental rewiring. Neuroscience introduces us to neuroplasticity, the brain's capacity to reorganize itself by forming new neural pathways. This means past experiences do not have to dictate future behavior. 3 practical steps to mental rewiring. Awareness, identify the belief. I am not qualified. People like me never succeed. Interruption, refuse to entertain the old script. Challenge negative self-talk. Replacement. Introduce new empowering beliefs. I can grow into what I'm called to do. I am learning every day. Repeated thoughts become mental habits. Mental habits become behavioral patterns. Patterns shape destiny. 1.3. The cultural mindset. Shift our community's need. Many of the leadership problems in African nations and diaspora communities are rooted in collective beliefs. Scarcity thinking, believing there is never enough, which fuels corruption and competition over crumbs. Dependency mentality, waiting for external saviors, foreign aid, or someone out there to fix local problems. Low expectations, accepting mediocrity as normal. The shift we need is profound, from scarcity to abundance thinking, from dependency to ownership mentality, from survival to innovation culture, from excuses to accountability consciousness. Mindset transformation is not Westernization. It is the rediscovery of dignity, discipline, creativity, and faith, harmonized with our unique cultural identities. 1.4. Mindset and personal leadership. Leadership begins with self-governance. Before you can lead institutions, you must lead your own thoughts, emotions, and habits. A strong leadership mindset includes confidence rooted in competence. You invest in learning, not just appearing powerful. Emotional intelligence. You respond, not react. Growth orientation. You see failure as feedback. Service-driven ambition. You desire influence to improve lives, not just to inflate ego. 1.5 Practical tools for mindset renewal. Daily reflection and journaling. Ask, what did I learn today? How did I respond under pressure? Identity statements, affirmations. Speak truths over your life. I am a solution carrier. My mind is sharp, disciplined, and creative. Curated exposure. Attend conferences, join growth communities, and consume content that elevates your thinking. Mentorship. Learn from those who embody the mindset you desire. Goal setting and habit tracking. Break big aspirations into daily actions. Accountability systems. Peers or mentors who challenge your excuses. 1.6. Overcoming limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs often arise from past failures, negative words from authority figures, or systemic barriers. You overcome them by naming them clearly, challenging their truth with evidence and new information, acting against them with small, courageous steps. 1.7. Case study, mindset shifts in African leaders. Case study, Simshagaya, Nigeria. Simshagaya, founder of Conga.com, entered a market many believed could not sustain large-scale e-commerce. Infrastructure was poor, and trust in online transactions was low. Instead of surrendering to scarcity thinking, he leaned into innovation, resilience, and long-term vision. He built one of Africa's leading e-commerce brands and inspired a new wave of digital entrepreneurship. His story teaches us, believe in the potential of your context. Let every setback refine your strategy, not your worth. 1.8. Daily mindset growth exercises. Write 3 affirmations each morning. Reframe one current challenge as an opportunity. Set one weekly growth goal and review it every weekend. Share your progress with a mentor or trusted peer. Chapter 1. Summary. Mindset transformation. Mindset is the foundation upon which leadership capacity is built. This chapter establishes that personal and societal transformation begins internally, with the beliefs leaders hold about themselves, their environments, and their possibilities. By shifting from a fixed mindset to a growth-oriented mindset, leaders unlock resilience, adaptability, innovation, and courage. The chapter emphasizes that Africa's transformation and global leadership effectiveness depends not merely on resources or policies, but on a renewed way of thinking that embraces learning, accountability, and purposeful action. Reflection. Questions. Chapter 1. What beliefs about leadership did you inherit from your upbringing, culture, or environment? Which limiting mindset has most affected your confidence or leadership decisions? How do you typically respond to failure? As a setback or as feedback? What new mindset must you adopt to lead effectively in a rapidly changing world. Who in your life models a growth mindset, and what can you learn from them? Workbook Exercise 1. Mindset Awareness Audit. Objective: identify current beliefs that shape your leadership behavior. List 3 beliefs you hold about leadership. For each belief, indicate whether it empowers or limits your leadership. Empowering, limiting. Workbook Exercise 2. Reframing limiting beliefs. Objective: replace fixed beliefs with growth-oriented perspectives. Limiting beliefs I want to change. New empowering belief I will adopt. 1 daily action that reinforces these new beliefs. Workbook Exercise 3. Leadership Growth Commitment. Objective: commit to intentional mindset transformation. 1 leadership skill I will actively develop this year. Resources or support I will seek, mentor, book, training. Date: I will review my progress. The future belongs to those who prepare for it today. Martin Luther King, Jr. Chapter 2. African Leadership Frameworks. Designing Systems That Serve. The Leadership Nexus. Leadership is not only the character of individuals, it is the architecture of systems. Without clear frameworks, even good leaders struggle. 2.1 Historical Foundations of African Leadership. Pre-colonial African societies often practiced leadership through councils of elders, community consultations, and spiritual accountability. Authority was linked to wisdom and service, not merely to wealth or coercion. Colonialism disrupted these patterns and imposed foreign administrative models. Post-independence, many nations inherited structures that did not fully fit indigenous values, resulting in hybrid systems that sometimes weakened accountability and participation. Understanding this history is vital. We are not starting from zero. We are rediscovering and refining. 2.2. The Crisis in Contemporary Leadership. Today's leadership crises, corruption, instability, and short-termism, are not caused by a lack of talented people. They stem from weak institutions and checks, over-centralization of power, personality cults instead of principled systems, limited youth and women's representation. Young professionals must move from complaining about leaders to reimagining leadership frameworks and participating in reform. 2.3. Building a new African leadership model. A sustainable leadership framework includes visionary governance, long-term planning beyond election cycles, data-driven decision-making, policies built on evidence, not emotion alone, ethical leadership, zero tolerance for corruption and abuse of power, citizen-centered service, policies designed from the ground up, regional integration and collaboration, seeing the continent and diaspora as an ecosystem. 2.4 Technology and Innovation in Leadership. Digital tools now enable e-governance, reducing bureaucracy and opportunities for corruption. Fintech solutions, advancing financial inclusion and diaspora remittances. Smart agriculture, using data to improve yields and food security. E-learning platforms, bridging education gaps and connecting diaspora expertise to local learners. Young professionals must see themselves as digital leaders, not just consumers of foreign technologies. Case example: fintech innovators in Ghana. A group of young Ghanaian entrepreneurs created a mobile platform allowing rural communities to save and access credit securely. By combining local knowledge with digital tools, they unlocked opportunities for thousands previously excluded from formal finance. 2.5 Creating Future-Ready African Leaders. Future-ready leaders are globally informed, locally rooted, adaptive, comfortable with uncertainty and change, collaborative, working across sectors and borders, inclusive, inviting youth, women, and minorities into decision-making. Leadership Challenge. Identify one institution you belong to and write a 1-page proposal on how it could be more transparent, innovative, or inclusive. Share it respectfully with someone in a position to act. 2.6 Leadership Styles across African cultures. Leadership in Africa is beautifully diverse, consensus-seeking models in parts of West Africa, the Ubuntu philosophy in Southern Africa, I am because we are, elders' councils and youth wings in different ethnic traditions. Young leaders must learn to adapt their style to context, while remaining grounded in core values like integrity, respect, and service. 2.7 Women in African Leadership. When women lead, communities often experience improvements in education, health, and social cohesion. Yet many women still face structural and cultural barriers. Practical steps to elevate women in leadership. Mentorship and sponsorship programs for girls and young women. Gender-sensitive policies in organizations and ministries. Intentional representation at decision-making tables. 2.8 Case Study. Leadership Frameworks in Action. Case Study, Strive Masiwa, Zimbabwe. Strive Masiwa, founder of Econet Wireless, operated in a challenging political and regulatory climate. Instead of compromising integrity, he prioritized ethical governance, regional collaboration, and long-term investment. Today, Econet is a pan-African telecoms force and a global reference point. His leadership illustrates that values-based frameworks can scale across nations and industries. Summary: African Leadership Frameworks. This chapter examines leadership through an African and global lens, emphasizing that sustainable transformation is built on strong systems rather than charismatic personalities. It explores the importance of ethical governance, cultural intelligence, institutional continuity, and accountability as foundational pillars for Africa's leadership renaissance. By grounding leadership in values, systems, and shared responsibility, the chapter presents a framework that moves beyond short-term gains toward long-term national and organizational development. Reflection questions. In what ways has leadership in your context relied more on individuals than on systems? Which leadership system, governance, education, church, organization, most needs reform in your environment? How does culture influence leadership effectiveness where you live or work? What ethical principle must guide your leadership decisions, even under pressure? How can you contribute to building leadership structures that outlast personalities? Workbook Exercise 1, Leadership Systems Mapping. Objective: identify and evaluate leadership systems in your environment. Community/organization/nation existing leadership structure, describe briefly. Strengths of the current system. Weaknesses or gaps. Workbook Exercise 2, Cultural Intelligence Assessment. Objective: reflect on how culture shapes leadership behaviors. Cultural values that influence leadership in my context. Cultural strengths that should be preserved. Cultural practices that may hinder progress. One adjustment I can make as a leader to respect culture while driving change. Workbook Exercise 3, Ethical Leadership Commitment. Objective: commit to values-based leadership. 3 core values that guide my leadership. 1 ethical challenge I anticipate in leadership. My response to that challenge will be guided by: we are the change that we seek. Barack Obama. Chapter 3, Youth Development, Africa's Power Base, Youth Sustainability Loop. Africa is the youngest continent in the world. This is either a ticking time bomb or a golden opportunity, depending on how we develop our youth. 3.1 Why Youth Matter. Young people bring creativity, digital fluency, and boldness. They start movements, build startups, and question outdated systems. They are not just leaders of tomorrow, they are critical actors today. 3.2 Barriers Facing Young Africans. Key barriers include limited access to quality education and practical training, high unemployment and underemployment, lack of credible mentorship and role models, minimal access to capital and networks, cultural attitudes that silence youth voices or dismiss their ideas. 3.3 Empowering Youth as Catalysts. Youth empowerment is not charity, it is strategic investment. Conferences, youth summits, and campus movements, such as Pensa and similar platforms, bring together thousands of young professionals and students to worship, learn, network, and build leadership capacity. 3.4 The Role of Education and Mentorship. Formal education must be accompanied by character formation, integrity, discipline, compassion, practical skills, entrepreneurship, digital literacy, project management, mentorship ecosystems, older leaders who guide, correct, and open doors, movements like APOSA, Apostolic Students and Associates, PENSA, Pentecost Students and Associates, and other faith-based or civic organizations show the impact of structured mentorship and peer learning. 3.5. Building a sustainable youth ecosystem. The Youth Sustainability Loop helps us visualize a healthy system, identify talent, train and support, provide access, opportunities, platforms, funding, integrate into institutions and leadership pipelines, review and evolve programs based on results. Sustainable youth development is not a one-time project. It is a continuous loop. 3.6. Youth entrepreneurship and innovation. Across the continent and diaspora, young Africans are building tech startups, creative brands, social enterprises, and agribusinesses. They are solving local problems with global potential. They need policy that encourages startups, access to seed funding and microfinance, hubs, incubators, and makerspaces, exposure to regional and global markets. 3.7. Youth and civic engagement. Democracies are strengthened when youth vote thoughtfully, volunteer in community projects, participate in consultations and town halls, use digital tools to hold leaders accountable with respect and evidence. 3.8. Success stories. Young change makers. From social entrepreneurs building low-cost schools, to activists promoting clean elections, to innovators creating solutions in health and agriculture, the examples are many. These stories remind us that age is not the barrier. Mindset and opportunity are. Summary: Youth Development, Africa's Power Base. This chapter establishes that Africa's greatest strategic asset is its youth population. Rather than viewing young people as a challenge to be managed, the chapter reframes them as innovators, leaders, and nation builders. It emphasizes intentional mentorship, education, skills development, and leadership pipelines as essential investments for sustainable growth. The chapter argues that when youth are empowered with vision, values, and opportunity, they become catalysts for economic progress, civic engagement, and societal renewal. Reflection questions. How does your community currently perceive its youth? As a problem or a resource? What leadership potential do you see among young people around you? Which barriers most limit youth development in your context? Education, access, mindset, policy? Who invested in you as a young person, and how did it shape your journey? What responsibility do you carry in developing the next generation of leaders? Workbook Exercise 1. Youth Leadership Identification. Objective: identify emerging leaders and areas of potential. 3 young people I see as future leaders. Leadership qualities I observe in them. Areas where they need development or support. Workbook exercise. 2. Mentorship Action Plan. Objective: create a practical mentorship strategy. My role in youth development: mentor, coach, advocate. 1 youth-focused initiative I can start or support. Resources required: time, skills, funding, partnerships. Timeline for action. Workbook exercise. 3. Youth Empowerment Pipeline. Objective: design a sustainable youth development pathway. Stage 1. Identification. How are youth discovered? Stage 2. Training. What skills are developed? Stage 3. Deployment. Where do they serve or lead? Stage 4. Support. How are they mentored and retained? Freedom is not something one can bestow on another as a gift. They claim it as their own. Kwame Nkrumah. Chapter 4. Civil Rights and Inclusive Nations. The Justice Compass. Leadership without justice is oppression. Civil rights anchor leadership in morality. 4.1. The Foundation of Human Dignity. Every human being, regardless of ethnicity, gender, faith, nationality, or status, has inherent worth. Recognizing this truth shapes how we build laws, run institutions, and treat one another. 4.2. Understanding African Civil Rights History. From independence movements to anti-apartheid struggles, African history is filled with battles for freedom and equality. These stories remind us that rights are not given freely. They are often won through sacrifice, activism, and persistence. 4.3. Current challenges. Many young Africans and diaspora communities still face discrimination and marginalization, limited access to justice, gender-based violence, abuse of power by officials or systems, These are not just legal problems, they are leadership and character problems. 4.4 Leadership and Civil Rights. Leaders promote civil rights when they enforce the rule of law impartially, protect whistleblowers and activists, model respect in their speech and behavior, create safe channels for citizens to report abuse. 4.5 Building fair, just, and inclusive nations. Youth-led organizations in countries like Ghana and Nigeria have campaigned for electoral reforms, anti-corruption measures, and police accountability. Social media has given them a megaphone. Courage gives them a message. 4.6 Gender equality and minority rights. Inclusive leadership means making room at the table for women in decision-making roles, ethnic and religious minorities, persons with disabilities, migrant and diaspora communities. Constitutions, organizational policies, and community norms must reflect this commitment to equity. 4.7 Legal frameworks for civil rights. Laws must clearly state rights and responsibilities, provide mechanisms for redress, be accessible and understandable to ordinary citizens, be implemented consistently, not selectively. 4.8 Advocacy and social movements. Youth advocacy groups use peaceful protests, petitions, community education, strategic litigation, and alliances with media and civil society to influence policy. Summary: Civil rights and inclusive nations. This chapter asserts that leadership without justice is incomplete and unsustainable. It explores civil rights as a foundational pillar of national development and social cohesion, emphasizing inclusion, dignity, equity, and the rule of law. Drawing from global civil rights movements and African liberation struggles, the chapter highlights the leader's responsibility to protect human rights, amplify marginalized voices, and build institutions that serve all citizens. True national progress, the chapter argues, is measured not only by economic growth, but by how justly and inclusively societies are governed. Reflection. Questions. How do you define justice in your personal leadership context? In what ways do systems around you exclude or marginalize certain groups? What role should leaders play in addressing inequality and discrimination? How can you balance advocacy for justice with unity and national cohesion? What personal bias or blind spot must you confront to lead more inclusively? Workbook exercise. 1. Inclusion assessment. Objective: evaluate inclusivity within your leadership environment. Community/organization/nation groups that may be underrepresented or marginalized. Policies or practices that contribute to exclusion. 1 immediate change that could improve inclusion. Workbook exercise 2. Justice-centered leadership action plan. Objective: translate values into practical action. A justice-related issue I feel called to address. Stakeholders affected by this issue. 1 constructive action I can take within my role. Risks involved and how I will manage them. Workbook exercise. 3. Civic responsibility commitment. Objective: commit to responsible civic leadership. 1 civic responsibility I will actively support, e.g., voting education, advocacy, policy dialogue. Partners or allies I can collaborate with. Timeline for engagement. A winner is a dreamer who never gives up. Nelson Mandela. Chapter 5. Purpose-driven success. Purpose integration map. Success without purpose is empty. Purpose aligns what you do, why you do it, and who benefits. 5.1. Defining purpose. Purpose is your reason for existence. It connects your gifts, experiences, values, and opportunities into a clear direction. You may express purpose through different roles over your lifetime, but the core remains, serving people with what you carry. 5.2. The psychology of meaningful achievement. Research shows that people who connect their work to a larger meaning persevere longer, experience greater satisfaction, inspire those around them. When you believe your leadership matters, you endure opposition, delay, and misunderstanding. 5.3. Purpose in African and global leadership. Purpose-driven leaders across Africa and the diaspora have built universities and schools, fought for environmental protection and public health, championed affordable healthcare and economic inclusion, modeled ethical politics and business. Their vision extended beyond personal gain to generational impact. 5.4 Aligning Purpose with Leadership. The Purpose Integration Map reminds us that mature purpose operates at 3 levels: personal purpose, who am I and what am I called to contribute? Organizational purpose, how does my team or institution serve society? Societal purpose, how does our collective work improve communities and nations? At the intersection of these levels is societal impact. 5.5 A Roadmap for Purpose-Driven Excellence. Self-discovery, assess your strengths, values, and burdens. Articulate a personal mission statement in 1 or 2 sentences. Set short, medium, and long-term goals aligned with that mission. Develop competence through learning, practice, and feedback. Build support systems, mentors, peers, communities of faith or practice. Review and realign regularly. 5.6 Personal Branding for Leaders. Your personal brand is the story people tell about you when you are not in the room. It should be built on integrity, consistency, excellence, service. Use digital platforms wisely to amplify your message, not inflate your ego. 5.7 Building Resilience and Focus. Resilience is the capacity to remain steady under pressure. Build it by practicing gratitude, maintaining healthy routines, learning from setbacks rather than internalizing failure, remembering the why behind your work. 5.8 Legacy and Impact. Legacy is not what you leave for people. It is what you leave in people. You build legacy when you mentor others, document your lessons, establish systems and institutions that continue beyond you. Summary: Purpose-driven success. This chapter reframes success beyond wealth, titles, or visibility, and anchors it in purpose, service, and lasting impact. It argues that leadership becomes meaningful when personal ambition aligns with collective good. By integrating values, vision, and responsibility, purpose-driven leaders build legacies that outlive their careers. The chapter challenges readers to define success not by what they accumulate, but by what they contribute to people, institutions, and future generations. Reflection. Questions. How do you currently define success, and who shaped that definition? What personal values guide your decisions, especially under pressure? Where do your skills and passions intersect with the needs of others? What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? How can your leadership create impact beyond your lifetime? Workbook Exercise 1. Personal Purpose Clarification. Objective. Articulate your core purpose as a leader. My top 3 values, causes or issues I feel deeply drawn to. Statement of purpose in 1 or 2 sentences. Workbook Exercise 2. Success Redefined. Objective. Align success metrics with purpose. Traditional measures of success I've pursued. New purpose-driven measures I want to adopt. One habit I will change to reflect this shift. Workbook Exercise 3. Legacy Action Plan. Objective. Translate purpose into long-term impact. One initiative or contribution I want to build. People or communities this will impact. First step. I will take in the next 30 days. How this aligns with my values and vision. Conclusion: Africa Rising in Light. Africa and its global diaspora are not merely places on the map. They are stories being written. Every renewed mindset, every ethical decision, every young person mentored, every act of justice, and every purpose-driven initiative adds a new sentence to that story. You are not powerless. You are not insignificant. You are a steward of influence, however small it may seem now. When many such stewards rise together, nations shift. The future belongs to those who reconstruct the mind before they rebuild the world. Emmanuel O. Mantse O.